There are a lot of things that I have done to overcome the challenge of being an introvert working in a sales role. And I'm going to share those here today. And we're going to first start out with trying to talk about the mindset, how to improve your mindset when you are an introvert. I'm going to provide a few very clear and practical tips and tricks that you can implement if you are more introverted. And then we'll wrap up with building your sales message. Part of overcoming the challenge of being an introvert is having an idea of what to say ahead of time, and building your sales message will help you to do that. And we'll wrap up talking about that. So let's get started and talk about how to improve your mindset if you are more introverted. And a lot of salespeople and a lot of sales managers believe that salespeople are born and that they're not made, meaning you have to have some sort of personality style, be extroverted, talk a lot. And it depends on these natural characteristics that you're born with that will determine whether or not you can be successful. And if you don't have those characteristics, these people believe that you cannot be successful. I personally don't agree with that. I view sales as being a skill. There are clear things you can learn to do. There are clear things you can learn to stop doing and improve on. You can learn how to be a better salesperson. And I'll talk about some of those things here today. So let's try to answer the question, can an introvert sell or be a successful salesperson? Well, on the other side of the personality spectrum from an introvert is an extrovert. An extrovert typically is more talkative. We can easily say that extroverted people usually have the gift of gab. They can keep talking and think of things to say real quickly. And in a sales role, that's definitely an advantage because you're dealing with other people and you can keep the conversation going and think of something to say real quickly. And to not have the gift of gab could be viewed as a disadvantage for an introvert. So how can we overcome that disadvantage? And I think you can overcome that disadvantage and you can be successful without the gift of gab if you have 3 skills or 3 competencies. And so the first one is, do you have the ability to communicate at a professional level? You might be shy. You might not be the most talkative person at a party. You may be a little bit more reserved. Do you have the ability to communicate with someone, to look at them in the eye? And I bring this up because there are certainly very, very introverted people that just have a tough time talking to other people, making eye contact. And if that's the type of introvert you have, you might not only not be successful as a salesperson, you will probably be unhappy working as a salesperson, but you can certainly be more reserved and not be real outspoken, but still have the ability to communicate in a professional way. And so that is one requirement, is at a basic level, sure, you don't have the gift of gab, but do you have the ability to communicate with other humans? That's something that you need. Do you have the ability to learn? Meaning if someone teaches you to go through a process, can you learn that process and then follow that process? If you have the ability to learn, I think you can overcome the challenge of not having the gift of gab. And one example of how that can help you, if you have the ability to learn, you can learn the different things to ask and talk about ahead of time so that you don't need to rely on that gift of gab. And then do you have the ambition and drive to be successful and to go out and work hard? If you have all these other great characteristics, but at the end of the day, if you don't have ambition and drive, then you won't be a successful salesperson, really, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. But when I'm building these 3 lists of core competencies to say, do you have these 3 things? And if you have these 3 things, you can overcome the challenge of not having the gift of gab or not being real extroverted. And I'll show you how that all works here today. In reality, not only can an introvert sell at just as well as an extrovert if they have those 3 characteristics, in some ways, an introvert might be better positioned to be a better salesperson than an extrovert because an extrovert has a few weaknesses. Yes, they might have the gift of gab, but they might actually talk too much. One of the keys to being a good salesperson is getting your prospect talking. And sometimes extroverted salespeople just do all the talking and don't spend any time listening to prospects because they're talking so much. They don't either get the prospect talking or really pay close attention to what they say. And I've worked with a lot of extroverted salespeople that definitely have the gift of gab and have great personalities. And because they rely on that so much, they either make the decision to not be as planned out, or because they are just so talkative, they don't feel like they have a need to plan out how they're going to interact with prospects. And I believe that can be a flaw. On the other end of the spectrum, introverts, because they aren't talking as much, they're typically good listeners, and being a good listener can really help you when you're trying to be a good salesperson. A lot of times, more introverted people are more analytical, which that can actually be a hindrance when you're trying to be a salesperson, overthinking things and being too analytical. But you can use that as a strength, especially when you're using the sales methodology that we provide, which is the SMART sales system. It can actually help you to be more analytical and to view things in different processes. So that can help you using our methodology. But certainly some more extroverted salespeople that are just swinging from the hip, they are not as analytical, and that could hurt them in certain ways when you're trying to be more systematic in your sales approach. And because introverts are more analytical, they are usually more open to being a little bit more prepared on the front end in terms of how they're going to interact with prospects, deal with meetings, deal with the sales process. And if you add up all that, you could actually, if you have those strengths and you approach selling in those ways, in some ways, you could actually sell better than a very extroverted, nonstop talking salesperson. All right, so hopefully that kind of helps you to have more confidence if you are a little more introverted and decrease some of that self-doubt that you may experience from time to time. Now let's talk about some tips and tricks that can help you to overcome that deficiency of not having that gift of gab. And one of the key tricks, and this is a very easy trick to implement, is that it's very easy to ask good questions. And the thing about questions is that when you are relying on the gift of gab, you're trying to think of what to say in that exact moment. And with questions, you can actually think ahead of time of what questions to ask. Before you go into a meeting, you can identify and make a list of these are the questions I should ask before you make a call. And you can memorize that list so you don't have to rely on that very quick instinct of thinking about what to say in the exact moment. The other thing about questions is that you can ask the same questions every time. I'm going to actually show you an example of some questions that I like to ask in a couple slides. These questions I asked at the beginning of every meeting. So when you start asking the same questions, not only is it less effort to try to, look at the list and memorize the list, but it's very easy to remember those questions and then always have at the top of your mind what question you need to ask. The other great thing about questions is that questions get the prospect talking. So if your deficiency is that you don't have a strong gift of gab and aren't real talkative, well, one trick that you can do is get the other person talking so that you don't even have to worry about talking. And the great way to get the other person talking is just to ask questions. If you go to lunch with someone, every once in a while, ask an open-ended question. The other person will do all the talking, and you can just sit there and listen. And while the other person's talking, you can be thinking about the next question to ask. So let me give you some examples of questions that I like to ask. So here are some introduction questions. These are questions I would often ask at the beginning of a meeting, say the beginning of an appointment. If you go out to a prospect's office or if you meet someone over coffee, right at the beginning of that meeting is when you might want to do some chit chat. And if you are relying on your gift of gab, you may try to think of what to say in that exact moment. And if you're more introverted, you might not have something to say. So here's some questions that I would ask, and I would ask these exact same questions at the beginning of every meeting. How's your day going so far? So that gets the other person talking about what's going on. And by the way, this is an open-ended question. So that's not saying, are you having a good day, with the answer being yes or no. It's how's your day going so far? So it's a little more open, could get the other person talking. Then right after that, I would always ask a question related to either the weather, sports, recent current event, or whatever. You can always say something about, oh, it's beautiful outside, or man, this weather's horrible, or did you see that recent game, or can you believe what's going on with that? And that's a good way to start a little chit chat. If you're talking to someone in a business setting and they're an employee somewhere, whether or not they're a prospect or a networking partner, you could ask them, hey, how long have you been working here? What did you do before this? Where are you from? So this is not a complete list, but you can see these are just really good questions to start a conversation and open a meeting and get some dialogue going. And the key thing here is that these are the exact same questions you can ask at the beginning of every meeting, the beginning of every conversation you talk with someone. So a real easy list to memorize and then to start a little chit chat at the beginning of your meeting. If you're meeting with a prospect, you can also ask questions to learn about what's going on with them. And I refer to these as current state questions. What's going on with their current state? And ideally, you want your current state questions to be related to the product or service that you sell. So if you sell cars, your current state questions would be, do you have a car today? What do you drive? What year is it? How many miles does it have? How's it running? And whatnot. So your current state questions will be different depending on what you sell. Using an example of selling web design services, here's an example of current state questions. Do you currently have somebody to help with your website? Are you currently working with an agency? How happy are you with the person helping? When was the last time you refreshed your website? How much traffic are you currently getting? What platform do you use? And so on. So these will be unique for you, but I'm providing these examples so you can look and see what current state questions look like. These are questions you could have in front of you on a piece of paper. If you can't remember them, no problem looking down, and these get the other person talking. So if you're worried about not having that gift of gab, having this set of questions here definitely fills the empty space of not having something to say. Another category of questions you could ask are called pain questions. And these are questions that probe for pain points. Hopefully you design these so that they probe for the pain points that you help to solve or fix. And going back to that same example of selling web design services, here are some examples of pain questions. How important is it for you to get more revenue out of your website? How important is it for you to convert more, get more traffic? So probing for pain in the area where I have something to offer. Again, the questions you can memorize and fill that gap. So that's a trick. That's a real easy trick to implement. Create a list, remember the list, have the list in front of you, and those questions will help you with not having something to say or keeping the conversation going or keeping you talking. And you'll see here that I went through those 3 different categories of questions. Those are examples of what I would call building blocks. And those are different types of questions. And there's other building blocks that you can create or we can help you to create. For example, you can create a value points building block, which is a list of the benefits for all the different ways that you help. There's a building block for the pain points that your product or service helps make go away. That's something that you can talk about with a prospect. You could certainly create a product building block, which are the key details about the product or service that you sell, a name drop building block, which is a customer example that you could share with a prospect, and then a closing building block, which is what you're trying to close for and what you should say when it's time to close. And so those are all building blocks. And as you can see, we can put all those building blocks to create a cold call script. And the cold call script can definitely help us when we're more introverted with knowing what to say and having something to say when we pick up the phone and end up on the phone with a prospect. And it can be an outline of the different things to talk about, and that can help you with overcoming the challenge of not having the gift of gab. We can use those same building blocks and mix and match them and move them around a little bit to also create a meeting script, so that when you go meet someone over coffee or go on an appointment to their office, you can have a structured way of how to organize the different things you want to talk about. And so all of that can kind of help you with knowing what to say and overcoming that challenge of not having the gift of gab or not being as talkative. Now, I showed you the putting those building blocks together to create a cold call script. We actually have a training module if you want to kind of see how to use those building blocks and organize those and go through those on a cold call. We actually have a training module on how to make cold calling easy now this is on YouTube, and this is on a playlist on our channel called the Smart Sales System, Sell Smarter, Not Harder. So if you go to that playlist, there is a training module on cold calling that will show you how to use that script. We're not going to go into that here today, but that would also help you with overcoming being more introverted. The next tip or trick is to become more prepared for objections, because objections are going to come up in almost every conversation with a prospect. And there's only a few different objections that will come up. I'm not interested. We don't have budget. We already use someone. We're not looking at making any changes, blah, blah, blah. So again, we're trying to be a better salesperson and know what to say when we're more introverted. Well, if you know objections are going to come up, a real easy trick here is to prepare responses for those and to have those ready in your head or on paper in front of you. And so how that helps with being introverted, the challenge is not being able to think real quickly what to say next. Well, these are situations that you know are going to come up, so prepare for them, and that will help you with knowing what to say. Now, here's a trick. I showed you those building blocks earlier. You can use those same building blocks for your objection responses. So you know that you're going to run into, I'm not interested, we're not making any changes, don't have budget. You can respond to those with those same pain questions. Hey, I understand. If I could ask you real quick, how important is it for you to improve your conversion rates for your website? So that's a way to respond to that objection. Now, I would say that's a very good way to get around that objection and keep the conversation going. But we're here talking about being introverted. That's also a good way of a trick to make it easy for you to know what to say. So this is decreasing those situations where you don't know what to say and can't think of something to say real quickly. And also, I think that what I'm giving you here to say is something really effective in that particular situation. You could respond to those same objections with your current state questions. Someone says, oh, we don't have budget right now. Oh, I understand. If I could ask you real quick, when was the last time you refreshed your website? So you're getting away from that objection. You also will run into prospects saying, just send me your info. Sure, I could certainly do that so I know what to send you. Can I ask you real quick, how important is it for you to improve your conversion rates? You can also respond to that same objection with your current state questions. So that's an example of using those same building blocks for responding to objections, and also an example of how being more prepared for objections can help you to overcome that challenge of not having the gift of gab, or not having the ability to think real quickly on what to say next to keep conversations going. Now, what I showed you is part of a full module on how to handle and get around objections. And that is also on that playlist on YouTube, on the Smart Sales System playlist. And it's a module called Here Are Some Objection Handling Examples. And so you can watch that full training module to get all the details. And we go into that whole methodology and a bunch of other objections and objection responses as well. So be sure to check that out. The next tip is that you don't have to be a pushy closer. So often, if you think about an extrovert being a salesperson, you can often picture someone who's real charming when it's time to close, or is able to be real aggressive and strong and pushy when it's time to close. I personally believe you don't have to be pushy when it's time to close if you do all the other stuff correctly. Meaning, if you build interest by communicating value and focusing on benefits, and if you find pain, then it's easier to close. And I'm going to show you another trick here, which is if you ask good questions, then closing will become much easier. And the type of questions I'm going to show you now are different. So again, I'm giving you more questions to ask, which also help you with having something to say and getting the other person talking. But these questions will also help you to be a better closer, because what I'm going to show you are qualifying questions. These are questions that filter bad prospects out by learning more about them. You know, like for example, if you find out someone doesn't have money and will never have money, then that's someone that you shouldn't spend your valuable time with. So you would basically get that prospect out of your funnel. So then you don't need to be that hard closer and pushy closer, or try to be Mr. or Mrs. Charismatic to try to close, because you're not even going to be dealing with that person anyways. You're going to be dealing with better prospects. So I'm going to give you 4 categories of qualifying questions here. So the first category is need to purchase. And so what motivated you to look at us? Do you mind if I ask why you met with me? What improvements could you see by purchasing this? What will happen if you don't purchase anything? Is there a date when you need to make this? What happens if the purchase isn't made? What is the time frame? So we could go into detail on why you should ask those questions, and I'm going to provide a training module that explains those after I show these 4 categories. But basically, these questions try to determine how much does the prospect need what you sell instead of wanting what you sell. The next category is, are they able to purchase from a financial perspective? What's your budgetary range? Is the budget approved? Do you have funds allocated to this? What's the budget? Are there other purchases that this may get used for? And so on. So these are the questions to ask to see if the prospect has the ability to purchase. Are you dealing with the decision maker? What's the decision-making process? What parties will be involved? What are the key factors? What functional areas will be impacted by this? Is there a committee? Who's the ultimate decision maker? Who's the person that signs this? Intent to purchase. What other options are you purchasing? How far along are you with them? How do you feel about your other options? What do you like about them? How do they compare to us? Is there a reason why you would choose us over them? If you had to make a decision today, which way would you lean? Those are all qualifying questions. So you don't need to memorize those all today. In fact, there's a whole training module that explains all those, and that this is also on that playlist, the Smart Sales System, Sell Smarter, Not Harder. And this training module is called How to Qualify a Customer in Sales. These questions will help decrease the need for you to be a big extrovert when it's time to close. You can be more analytical, asking better questions, and then make better decisions. Which prospects do you even try to close? And notice, I'm talking about being a better closer here. This is not even our training module on being a better closer. This is our training module on qualifying and asking good qualifying questions. So there's 2 benefits to these. One is they help you with being more introverted and having something to say. And then they also help you with not having to be as big of an extrovert when you try to close. And there's also a whole nother training module on closing, which has nothing to do with those questions that I just showed you. So be sure to check that out. So those are just a few tips and tricks. All of those are easily implementable. It's all just really organizing your thoughts and having questions and things to say ahead of time. Now, in some of those I showed you building blocks that were filled in with web design services. Of course, you want to build those building blocks for your own product or service. And I'm going to show you now how to build those building blocks and how to build your sales message for what you sell. And so I'm going to take you through a step-by-step process here that you can follow to create your own sales message. Now I'm going to go back to that web design services example to go through this process, but you can just replace all of the details for web design with your own product or service. So the first step of the process is identifying, okay, what is it that I want to sell to the people I'm talking to in the message I'm creating? Okay, what does that service include? So web design services includes building and designing and websites, graphic design. What are some ways you're different from the competition? What are some bragging points about your company? So things that your company is really strong at. The next step is to think, okay, who are we going to be communicating with? Who are we going to be talking to? Who are we creating this sales message for? And when you change the buyer type, then your sales message could change. So for this example, we're going to use small businesses. So we're trying to sell web design services to small businesses. Okay, the next step is to think about what are the benefits that can be created when we sell our web design services to small businesses. And so to help you with this, the end goal is trying to think of a list of 3 to 6 benefits. Well, one thing that we can do is we can start with looking at a list of common benefits. Typically, regardless of what you sell, you usually end up, hopefully what you sell, you can usually end up making something work better. You usually can help decrease the time it takes to do something. You can usually help to increase the revenue or income for the person you're selling to. You might be able to decrease their costs or decrease their expenses. If you're selling B2B and that business sells some sort of product or service, you might be able to improve what they sell, the quality of the products or services that they sell. You might be able to decrease the risk for their business or their life. You might be able to improve their visibility, their access to information, their decision making. So if you sell to like an executive, you might be able to have them more easily access more information and make better decisions. Those are just really generic, common benefits that many products or services deliver. And what you can do is you can look at these to say, okay, well, do I help in any of these ways? And then build on that to be more specific. So if we look at, do we make something work better when we're selling web design? Okay, we increase website traffic, we improve website conversion rates, and we can increase revenue generated through the website. All right, so we can fill that in here. Now we've completed that step. So these are benefits that our product or service delivers. The next step is to think about, okay, what are some pain points and problems that we make go away? And here's another trick. The end goal that we want to think of is a list of pain points that we can talk about with our prospect and try to use to get their attention. But here's the trick. You can start with those benefits that you just came up with. So these are the 3 benefits that we just came up with. For each benefit, there's usually an opposite problem or pain point that you can make go away. So if we increase the revenue generated through the website, there's many small businesses that aren't getting enough revenue through their website. If you help to improve conversion rates, then the problem that you solve is that website visitors are coming to the website, but they're not buying anything, they're not converting. If you help to increase website traffic, then there's a common problem that it's difficult to get traffic to the website. So we use those benefits to come up with a corresponding list of pain points, and we can fill those in here. The next step is to come up with pain questions. I showed you how you can use pain questions to be less introverted. Well, the key here is to think of what can I ask to figure out if the prospect has the pain points that I resolve. And here's a trick. So our goal is to come up with pain questions. We can start with the pain points that we just brainstormed. For each pain point that you come up with, there's a corresponding pain question. So you basically a question that you can ask to see if that pain point exists. So then we can fill those in here. Then you want to come up with your current state questions. I really don't have a trick for you to come up with those. You just need to think about what you sell and what you should be asking to figure out what the prospect is doing in that particular area. The next step is to come up with a name drop example. And so there's a few different things from what we've already brainstormed that we can use to come up with our name drop example. So we can start with the target buyer type. So for this example, we're targeting small businesses. So let's think of a small business type of small business for our name drop example. Of course, you'd want to think of some target buyer that you've already done business with so you can share an example. So this would be specific to your customers. Then we can move on to the pain points that we deliver. So if we solve the problem of that businesses need to generate more revenue through their website, we can think about, is that maybe a pain point this customer that we helped with that they had? So the accounting firm that we work with, they needed needed to get more leads online. Then we can progress to the product that we sold them. So the product for the sales message is web design services. So what is the product that we sold to this customer? We help them to redesign their website. Now we can move on to the value points. So here are a couple value points that are generic to how we help small businesses. Did we help the accounting firm with either of these? So we helped them to convert more traffic to leads. We were able to increase the revenue they generated online. So we can use that to create this name drop example. We worked with an accounting firm and they had the problem of they needed to generate more leads online. To solve this, we helped them to redesign their website. This helped them to convert more traffic into leads. This ultimately helped them to increase the amount of revenue they were generating through their website. So now we have a great name drop example there. And there was a step-by-step process that I used to create that. Hopefully that's not overwhelming for you. But the point is that by going through all those steps, each of those steps is a building block. And then we can use all those building blocks to create our cold call script or our meeting script. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of how to overcome some of the challenges of being an introvert and working in the field of sales. I think you can be successful. And those are some things that you can improve your success and overcome maybe any challenges that you might have with not having the gift of gab or not being as talkative as you think you should be. Hopefully that helps you. If that helps you in at least one way, if you want to return the favor, very easy for you to do. Just simply like, comment, share this video, subscribe to our channel. Any or all of those help us tremendously, and none of those cost you anything. If you find these tips to be helpful, you may want to follow us on any or all of these social platforms. We provide sales tip videos on these every day, which are basically like 30 to 60-minute snippets from these long videos, and we post those every morning. So it's a more of a bite-sized format for you to get your sales tip for the day. Also, following us there is also a way to support us as well. If you want more help, everything I've shared with you here today is part of the Smart Sales System. You could see that I directed you back to our Smart Sales System playlist on YouTube. The Smart Sales System basically stands for Sales Messaging and Response Tactics. So you can see that we are all about getting salespeople to be better salespeople by improving what they say, improving how they respond. And by doing all that, we think that we can make salespeople not only smarter, really smarter by enabling them to make good decisions, but also appearing smarter and giving the impression that they're actually smarter as well. And we call it the Smart Sales System because this isn't just we don't just shoot you with a fire hose of a bunch of tips. It is actually a step-by-step system that you can implement, almost download into your own brain. And it starts with level 1, which is creating your sales message. That's actually what I showed you here today. So we definitely have more information and more tools to help you with creating your sales message, but that's the level 1. And then once you have your sales message, then you can progress to level 2, which is using that sales message to create your cold call script, email templates, voicemail scripts, objection responses, and whatnot. And then once you have all those sales tools, then it's about execution in level 3. And then the Smart Sales System definitely can help you with how to cold call, how to get around objections. Some of the modules that I pointed you to today was part of level 3. And the good news is that if you want to implement and learn the Smart Sales System, it's all on YouTube for free. And I just showed you where that playlist is here a few slides ago. So it's all free. The reason why we give away the Smart Sales System for free is because it aligns with our software application that we sell called Sales Scripter. And Sales Scripter aligns with all of these different steps. For example, level 1 is to create your sales message. Sales Scripter actually has a tool called the Sales Message Builder, which will take you through all those steps and give you a place to organize all those thoughts and create more than one sales message. Sales Scripter also aligns with level 2 because there's an area of Sales Scripter called the Sales Playbook, which is a library of scripts and emails and voicemails, objection responses, and whatnot. The Sales Playbook actually fills in with the sales message that you create. So it's a real efficient way for you to create all those documents. And especially if you need to create more than one sales message, you can have a unique sales playbook set of live emails and scripts for each different buyer type or each different sales message that you create. And then Sales Scripter can certainly help you with level 3. There's a CRM and email automation and objection handling tools and training tools to help you with cold calling, objection handling, emailing, email automation, and whatnot. So if you want more help beyond that, I certainly sell consulting hours in 2, 5, or 10 hours, and I help many of our customers to go through these different steps and implement all this. I can help you to create your sales message, create your scripts, and whatnot. So that is available if you want to go in that direction. Now, if that's interesting, but you still don't know what to do next, another option is you could purchase our book called The Smart Sales System, Sell Smarter, Not Harder, and you can get that on Amazon here. It aligns with that playlist of videos on YouTube. Actually, the playlist on YouTube goes through each chapter. And whichever way you prefer to learn, the good thing about having the book is you can highlight different chapters and sections, and you can flag different pages and have it on your desk and use it as more of a sales tool. And that's a bit difficult with videos. So hopefully this was helpful. And if you want any more information on Sales Scripter, you can do that at salescripter.com. We also have free ebooks on our website, plenty of videos and free tips and tools on our website. If you want to contact us, that's the best place to go. There's a chat window where you can get our email address or phone number from the website. Hope this was helpful, and thanks for being here. Thanks for staying to the end of the video, and we will see you on the next one. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.